Hello and welcome into the Cubs on Deck podcast. My name is Greg Huss. I'm one of your hosts, and today I am joined by the other Greg Zumach, for the first time since forever. Zumach, how's it going, buddy?
It's the first time that I've been on since the new theme song to open up.
Yeah, true.
So,
your thoughts?
It's chill. It's just kind of getting into stuff.
Yeah.
I think it fits. It fits.
I'll be honest. I kind of dig the other one better. I'm going to be completely honest. I like the other one better. This one works better for the YouTube crowd. It doesn't send out copyright strikes for that, even though it's whatever. I won't get into it. I like the other one better. We're gonna make this one work. It's totally fine. I'm okay. I promise.
That you were very convincing in that.
Yeah, no. I mean, so but you're back for the first time since I think the last time was the all the draft stuff was the last time, or I mean maybe trade deadline. Did you come on?
No, I think it honestly might have been the draft.
Yeah,
it's been a crazy few couple months, I guess.
Yeah.
Leading into it, there's been a lot of like Cub stuff. There's been just some personal stuff, like professionally. Yeah. For me, I'm at a stage in my career where I'm kind of making some moves for a promotion, which is as a faculty member, that's this giant process, which thankfully that's moving forward. And it's been a crazy couple months because the organization feels like it's at an inflection point and like a few different levels, and not this like crazy cliff and not this crazy everything's riding on the season or anything like that. But it is interesting how like the major league team, some of those emotions and feelings from fans tend to like filter down to the minor leagues. And then in many ways, the minor leagues are kind of became this focal point at the deadline of like, why aren't these prospects moving? So I know we're going to dive into some of that, but it's been a really interesting few weeks.
I feel like weirdly, like the I don't know if it's a meme, but it's like the saying where it's like all of a sudden I became important at work and I didn't mean to. It's like that was the Cubs farm system at the deadline, was like I became important, and that was not the intention here.
Right. Absolutely. Right. Like you could almost say this is about like Owen Casey or we'll say Jefferson Rojas is like, I just became important at work and it's ruined my life. Kind of thing. Like, why is Jefferson Rojas not in name a city, a different city? So, I'm sure it didn't actually ruin Jefferson Rojas.
No, but
you're right. It's important.
It's and the system is in a different place now than it was not too long ago. And that's what we're going to cover for the bulk of this episode. At the back end of this episode, we're going to cover basically taking a look at the system before last year, before the 2024 season. What did the system look like then? And what does the system look like right now? And how do those things compare and contrast to each other? We're going to spend a lot of time on that. We're going to talk a little bit about kind of now that we're a month, almost exactly, we're recording this on Saturday, almost exactly a month out from the trade deadline, reflecting on who we are happy that the Cubs did not trade away as a part of package deals, because that gets super interesting. But at the top here, we're going to get into some real quick news and notes, because there are a few items that need to be, I guess, said out loud. There's items that people can go on social media and read and see about them. But if this is your way to consume Cubs minor league baseball, then they're absolutely worth mentioning here, even if we're not covering them at great length. So I think the first of which of those kind of all important news and notes is the fact that Kane Kepley, Cubs second round draft pick this year, is in Myrtle Beach still, for some reason in Myrtle Beach, and he is absolutely on fire. Like, he is tearing the cover off the ball right now. Let me pull up his numbers from this season. I believe he's played in 21 games. He is slashing .342 with a .510 OBP. He's got an OBP. He's getting on base more than 50% of the time. He's got a slug of .513, and he has that because he's doubled once, tripled twice, and homered twice, tripled 3 times and homered twice, and he is walking more than he's striking out. He's just been outrageous. I think it's very apparent, and we've honestly talked about Kane Kepley a decent amount on this podcast since he's been drafted, but like, what he's doing is outrageous, man.
It's pretty crazy, and I will probably, I don't know if I am, but amongst the three of us on our draft post, whatever, I think I probably settled in as the lowest on Kane Kepley. Again, maybe I'm speaking for you or Brian, but again, very worthy pick, totally justifiable signing bonus. Absolutely was taken in the round he should be taken in. Still a guy that I probably wouldn't have gone with that. I was talking with somebody on the scout exec side, and there were a couple names that I threw out that I probably would have gone this route. And at the end of the day, though, there's just a ton of belief from certainly from some folks within the Cubs organization, even at very, very high levels, about Kane Kepley. He played for Liberty before, and he mashed. I mean, he just really, really hit. Didn't hit a ton of home runs. I think he peaked at like 9 home runs for Liberty, then went to UNC. Didn't really hit a lot of home runs, but went from, Big South to
ACC. Well, it actually, Liberty was, his first year at Liberty, he was in the Atlantic Sun Conference, and then they switched over to Conference USA.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And so mid-major to a major conference, and hit very well, right? And did all the batted ball metrics. Like, sometimes that can deteriorate when you go up a level, even if your production's still pretty good. Then he gets into pro ball, and I mean, he's just destroying things. This is the third year in a row now that we've seen a Cubs draft pick taken in the first couple rounds just dominate levels at the lowest level. Now, we saw Shaw and Smith basically force their way up to Double-A. I don't think that's going to happen with Kepley. I think they're actually very intentional about keeping him at high A or low A. I mean, single A, and maybe there are some considerations for that, but regardless, I mean, he couldn't have possibly started better at pro ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think my takeaway of all of this, I think I have a few points I want to hit on. One is that we should be wildly impressed by what he's doing in Myrtle Beach. Like, it is very impressive, and it's not only the stat line that I just read off. It's not the slash line. It's not the numbers. It's the way that he's playing is incredibly entertaining. We've talked about that. Obviously, the defense in the outfield is good. He's played center and right. I don't think he's played left field yet, actually, but he's played center and right field. He on the base paths is an absolute menace. I think that was the phrasing that Dan Kantrovitz went on the Road to Wrigley show, and he called Kane Kepley a menace, which is like wildly accurate because he's a madman on the base paths, and it's super, super fun. Just always getting dirty. Really fun to watch, right? So that's item number one, is that we should be watching this because it's awesome. Item number two is that he shouldn't be in Myrtle Beach. Like that shouldn't be the case. He should be in South Bend right now. Like you said, I don't think that he should be pushing his way up to Double-A Knoxville this season. But I think at this point, because he wasn't called up 2 weeks ago up to South Bend, I think you're probably starting off the 2026 campaign with him in South Bend. I would have liked to, if he was going to perform this well, finish off the year in South Bend, get a month, 3 weeks to a month in South Bend, so we can start off next year in Knoxville. That's probably not going to happen at this point, but that's fine, right? It's totally fine. The last point I want to make, though, is that you point out that Matt Shaw 2 years ago was outrageous in his pro debut the year he was drafted. Last year, Cam Smith was outrageous in his pro debut the year he was drafted. Now, Kane Kepley, really the top drafted player that is playing this year, because obviously Ethan Conrad is not playing, working his way back from injury, although there was videos of Conrad swinging, which is super, super fun. This Kane Kepley is not Matt Shaw and Cam Smith. I made a joke on social media about, it was a video. I think it was his most recent home run, Kane Kepley's most recent home run. And I go, hey, Houston Astros, you got any more of those Kyle Tuckers? And like, Kane Kepley is not Cam Smith. I promise. Like I think he's better than what we described post draft. But I also I'm not going to sit here and say he's a top 5, top 10 prospect in the organization at this point. I'm just, I guess, pleasantly surprised, and I'm enjoying it, I guess, is my kind of overall takeaway.
Yeah, I think you could make a compelling argument that he's somewhere around 10 for me. I have to really sit and think about it, but just with where the organization is. I think you could maybe make a case around 10. But to your point, this is not Cam Smith, who I don't know how the Cubs internally had him ranked or even kind of remember exactly the consensus was. But I mean, he was pretty widely viewed, at least from outside organizations, as like maybe 1 or 2 in the system. Like that was the guy you wanted. It was like Smith or Shaw.
Yeah.
And Kepley's not going to be that. That being said, kind of what I think independently both of us have maybe hinted at a smidge is the fact that I think he's in single A ball because he is dominating team models. And I think he could absolutely be a guy that you say, we took him in the second round. We actually took him for a little bit of an underslot. And if there is the major league piece that we really like, and he's a second or third part of it, boom, perfect. And he looks great on your model. Fantastic.
Accurate. That is it. Like Cam Smith was the primary piece. Well, I mean, it was weird because Isaac Paredes, whatever. Cam Smith was the primary piece that Kyle. He was of the Kyle Tucker trade. Kane Kepley would not be the primary piece, but we can still look at Kane Kepley and be like, oh, there's like I can see major league talent there that I probably didn't see when he was drafted at the time he was drafted. I guess that's where I come down to. So,
yeah, I mean, if you're somebody like a team like Cleveland, who looks at Stephen Kwan and says, this is the type of profile we like, or maybe it's Miami or something like that. I think there's a route of, it's not that they are leaving him there intentionally to trade him. It is that, you know what? Things are great. Yeah. Let's finish off the year. He gets to play in the playoffs. Things are looking good from a model perspective. And then we just revisit next year.
Yeah, and we know that the Cubs are quick to turn around and trade a lot of their draft picks. So that's just that's a thing. So, all right, next item, unless you have anything else, next item here is wanted to talk a little bit about, I mean, Brian, I think last week, Brian and I talked about the outrageous hot streak from the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, and we dug into 5 or 6 guys specifically that have been really, really good. I just want to very briefly hit on what this might mean, I guess, leading into our conversation that we'll have here in a little bit about seeing this breakout talent. And I'm going to actually read this from a team perspective. So the Myrtle Beach Pelicans clinched the second half. Obviously in the minors, they do first half, second half to get into the playoffs. They don't do season long standings. They do first half, second half. In the second half, the Myrtle Beach Pelicans on, I believe it was Thursday night, clinched their division in the second half and were terrific in that second half. They went 39-16. I know we don't cover much team-oriented stuff. We mostly cover prospect stuff. This is important here, right? 39-16 was their record in the second half, which is like Milwaukee Brewers level of good. But their run differential in the second half of the season was plus 139. And that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. And for reference, in their division, the next best run differential was plus 10, and they had plus 139. In all of the Carolina League, both divisions, in both the North and the South, the next highest was plus 34. And so they have outscored their opponents by more than 100 runs more than the next team. What they've done is absolutely insane. We covered Christian Oliva, we covered Matt Hallback, we covered Alexi Lumpoy, Angel Cepeda, Ty Southesine. We covered those guys last week. But like having this breakout team wide, and that doesn't even cover the pitchers who have been really, really solid too. You have to limit runs in order to have that run differential too, not just score runs. It's crazy what we've seen the second half of the season.
No, it's something where, at this time of year, post draft, I start to get back into the swing of trying to watch some of these games. And it's funny because I take a little bit of a break, basically once like the College World Series hits to the draft. And then a few days after, because I really need to kind of take a breath, I'm mostly in like draft mode, and I'll occasionally pop on some video of some teams, especially if there's like a big start or something like that. But in general, I'm looking at like college players. And so it's funny because when I started turning back into the Pelicans, I'm still remembering from like May when it wasn't aesthetically very good.
Yeah.
It wasn't performance very good. And no, like Kepley wasn't there and stuff. But like you said, this is not just Kane Kepley like fueling an offense. The, measurably, I know you talked about it in the last episode. It's a very good one. But like multiple young guys are just like leveling up as we're speaking. And it's just hilarious to like watch this, go back and kind of remember what it looked like, and then look at the stat lines, and you're like, Angel Cepeda is a 115 WRC plus. Like the dude is 15% better than league average.
Yeah.
There. Like that is incredible. These guys were terrible. And I mean that with a lot of respect, but like they were really having difficulty adjusting to affiliated ball. It was just, it's amazing to see. And there's reasons for it, right?
Yeah. Like, and Brian, I think Brian might have hinted at this on the podcast. If not, he mentioned it on the 1060 West Discord channel, maybe. But like, these aren't dudes that are a whole bunch of draft picks coming in. Like, this is not 5 Kane Kepleys coming in and doing this. It's just
or like
Kane
Ethan
Kepley.
Conrad and Kepley, and it isn't that.
It's a whole bunch of dudes that have been there basically the entire year, completely flipping the script. And some guys that are very young, like Alexi Lumpoy, Ty Southasine, Angel Cepeda. Those are 3 dudes that don't have a whole lot of experience. Matt Hallback's a little bit older guy. He's a little bit older of a college draft pick from last year. But like, these dudes are young guys that have figured out how to hit in professional baseball. And I don't know, man, them breaking out is just super, super important. And so, like I said, we'll get into that here in a bit. So I don't want to linger on that too much, but it's worth pointing out in this initial like news and notes kind of segment here.
Yeah, they're the team that I am looking forward to most to watching in the playoffs.
Yeah.
In the affiliates. I'm not the Cubs, obviously.
Yes. But they're also a fun team.
What? Yeah, they're a fun team. Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. Like, it is not. And with all due respect to older players who are succeeding at this level, great for them. You know, like Matt Hallback, Kane Kepley, like this is good for them, right? If it was an entire roster of that, it's kind of like, I mean, that's kind of what you're hoping to see, right? I mean, not that it's not good to see it, but it's like, you're kind of hoping to see it. But I want to see Cepeda drive a ball into the gap or even over the fence in the playoffs. Like, I want to see, do things that he's doing. Like, it's just, it's really exciting, fun team. And some of the pitchers aren't even that old either. I mean, like, that's what is really exciting. There is development still to be had, but oh my goodness. I know you follow things so closely and so well, and you and Brian do it over the summer, whereas I take a little bit of a break. But I got to tell you, it is like night and day from where it was earlier in the season.
Dude, I hadn't even thought about that, like that switch for you, where like you were like first half Pelicans, second half Pelicans, not even remotely the same teams. Especially for you, that had the gap in the middle. That I kind of love that. I kind of love
absolutely. That I mean, I was hoping to see Cole Mathis do stuff, and I think he's almost on his way back. And according to our good friend Arizona Phil, and I've heard the same, and you've kind of heard the same. It sounds like he's going to the Arizona Fall League, which is going to be awesome. But, again, like that would be a different thing if like Cole Mathis has just been destroying the baseball season. It's not. So it's a really fun development. It's a very fun team. And I mean, there's no better time to say it. Birds are hot.
Birds are hot, baby. Last two quick hits are these are actually pretty quick hit items. I want to point out, we've talked about Cristian Hernandez's speed on this podcast a lot. We've talked about the speed defense, the element that he brings there. We've discussed it plenty. But I want to point out that this season, he has 52 stolen bases as of today on Saturday. He may rack up a couple more on Saturday night and on Sunday. We'll see. But as of right now, as we're recording this, he has 52 stolen bases, which is an outrageously high number. I understand that the whole stolen base thing is different than it was years ago. There's more stolen bases now than there used to be. But to put into some context here of what Cristian Hernandez is doing on the base paths this year, at 52 stolen bases, he's 3 away from tying the most recent high mark of John Andreoli, who posted 55 stolen bases back in 2012. Shout out to John Andreoli. If he can surpass John Andreoli's 55 stolen bases, which seems like that's going to be a doable thing now that he should have next week is the last week of games for the South Bend Cubs. Like this upcoming week is the last week for the South Bend Cubs. If he can tack on a few extra stolen bases and pass Andreoli, the next guy on the list was back in 2009, and it was Tony Campana, who had 66 stolen bases. So it'd be Tony Campana at 66 back in 2009. The next most is Cristian Hernandez this year. That is some pretty good company to be in.
So I got to ask though, with Tony Campana, how many games was that? Because if you told me that he did that in like 40 games, I wouldn't completely be surprised. But that is still incredible, right? Like if you think about Campana and that inside the Parker he had at Wrigley, I mean, they still show it on replays. Like to even be in that kind of
years, dude. That's a long
that's what I'm saying. Like to even be in that rarefied air is totally a credit to Cristian Hernandez. He's fun. I mean, the bat's kind of there. Like you see flashes of it every once in a while. He had like a really good stretch recently and kind of maybe backed off a little bit, but the speed. There's that old adage, right? Like speed doesn't slump, and it definitely helps here, even as the game maybe shifts a little bit away from it, maybe towards it back a little bit. Good for Cristian. That's awesome.
Last item that I've got is not nearly as exciting, but we got to mention it here, given how much we talk about this guy, is that Brandon Birdsell is undergoing elbow surgery. I've heard it described as exploratory elbow surgery. They are not sure what they are getting into exactly when they go in, but the expectation is that he's going to miss a decent amount of time. He will miss the rest of this season. There's not much left of the season, but he will miss the rest of this year. Hopefully not too awful much of next year. But what it does is it's quite possibly the worst possible timing for Brandon Birdsell to go under the knife in this way. I mean, he's coming off of 2024 when he was the Cubs minor league pitcher of the year. Obviously got a slow start to this season, and he is Rule 5 eligible going into this offseason. And so in a year that he was, as long as he stayed remotely healthy, he was going to be a lock to be added to the 40-man roster this offseason. Now it just it depends on how much time he's going to miss next year. It depends on a lot of different factors, but just awful timing for Birdie, and praying for him, hoping for good things as far as his surgery goes.
Yeah, I want to toss out that, I don't want this to make it sound like it's all doom and gloom, but definitely that one hit me pretty hard.
Yeah.
Gotten to know Brandon a little bit, gotten to know his family a little bit. Excellent people, amazing people. Brandon went out of his way to come up and say hi to my kids when they came out in Omaha. My kids still talk about that, having a baseball player come up and talk to him and give him a little ball and just, I think his impact on the game is going to go a lot further than where he is now. Hopefully it's just a low point in a otherwise like really bright career. But yeah, it sucks. It sucks really hard to have seen this happen. From a purely baseball standpoint, I think it'd be very, very, very difficult for any team to pop him in the 40-man personally. And the reason for that is
like drafting the Rule 5.
Drafting the Rule 5, yeah. And at least it's my understanding that teams can't ask for his medicals, or they can ask. The Cubs don't have to give it to him. And they can't ask his agent for medicals. That would be tampering. And so in that case, they can't really figure out how significant of the surgery it is.
Mm-hmm.
So now the Cubs may acquiesce that just out of good nature or to facilitate a trade or something of that standpoint. But I don't believe that they can ask for that. Teams can ask for that information. And so with this being not free agency or anything like that, it makes it really, really challenging. That also don't be surprised if the Cubs don't put a lot of information out publicly about it or want to divulge any information to us. Because it's kind of that same thing of like, if it's really pretty mild, we don't want to forecast that unless we find out he had Tommy John, at which point that's going to come out.
So the process here with him, right? So let's say that he is missing a big chunk of the 2026 season. If a team were to select him in the Rule 5 draft away from the Cubs, he would have to go on their 40-man roster. That's normal. That happens with every team.
In the
winter, have to go on their 40-man roster for the duration of the offseason. So that he takes up a roster spot, knowing in this hypothetical scenario that he would not be playing next year.
Yes.
For a bulk of next year, that he would still take up a 40-man roster spot until spring training rolls around, when they can then add him to the 60-day IL, and he does not take up a 40-man roster spot. At that point, there's a certain number of days / games that he has to participate in I guess it's just days, right? It's not games. A certain number of days that he has to be on the Major League roster in 2026, or else those Rule 5 limitations for being on the Major League roster then roll over to the 2027 season for him on that team. So a little bit of context on how that might work and why it just becomes super, super tricky as far as his status on the Rule 5 or in the Rule 5 draft on the 40-man roster for the Cubs or another team.
Yeah. And I mean, we're going to operate with a whole bunch of unknowns here, and I'm not going to really poke and pry and try to figure out too much either. Personally, I'm hoping it's very mild, and we find that it's something like bone chips or something that it's like, oh, actually, I feel so much better after that's done. But just sending a lot of good vibes to Brandon. He's a great dude.
All right, let's get into our final two segments here. The first of which is talking about the Cubs prospects that were not traded away. And I'll probably kick it to you first here to get your thoughts on. We obviously saw some younger guys in Wilfred De La Cruz and Ronnie Cruz traded away. We saw Ryan Gallagher sent away as a part of a trade. We saw Christian Franklin, one of our favorites on this podcast, to get traded away. But there's a whole host of names. Obviously, Owen Casey is probably the top of our Owen Casey and Jackson Wiggins are the top of our list in terms of the biggest prospects that were not traded away. But I'll kick it to you. Now that we're a month out, who are you feeling really good about that the Cubs were able to keep in the organization right now and going into the offseason and then moving into future seasons?
So I'm going to jump out with a name we've talked about him today, but he's not a name that like is going to jump out like Casey or Rojas or anything. And that's Angel Cepeda. And the reason for that is that while he was looking good, he wasn't going to headline a deal for like a premier starting pitcher. So, if you're moving Casey, if you're moving Rojas, some combination of the two, you're likely ending up with a multiple year controlled starting pitcher. And while I definitely didn't want to lose those guys either, you can kind of be like, okay, right, we're just trading future wins for now wins, but we still have them for a couple years. A Cabrera, a Joe Ryan, Gore at the time, it isn't really an option anymore. Those you can kind of understand. I'm not saying that would be an equal deal, but you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. You're not giving up those guys for like Adrian Hauser or Mike Soroka or anything like that. Angel Cepeda, though, is at a level where he's probably not popping off models, and he's interesting, but we saw like Ronnie Cruz go for Mike Soroka, Ronnie Cruz plus, but Ronnie Cruz and Christian Franklin go for Mike Soroka. I didn't want to lose Angel Cepeda. I didn't want to lose him then, and I definitely am happy they didn't lose him as a matter, post deadline. So, yes, it would have been great to land like an Adrian Hauser. He's kind of interesting, but something to that level, I would have been disappointed.
Yeah, it's. Do you like Jefferson Rojas? Okay, then you get the same vibe from Angel Cepeda, and like he's not the what you could argue that Rojas is the top prospect in the Cubs organization. I don't have him there, but you can argue that. You can't argue that right now with Cepeda. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But like they're cut from the same cloth to a certain degree, and yeah, honestly, he's number one on my list as well. Outside of Wiggins. And Rojas, or Wiggins and Rojas are numbers 1A and 1B for me. That I'm glad they didn't trade away. I think that Wiggins is important for multiple reasons, right? I think that he's important, number one, because he is a pitching prospect. I'm going to be careful about how I'm saying that. He's a pitching prospect like we have not seen in the Cubs organization in a long time. I know Cade Horton is a bad man. Cade Horton is terrific in Chicago. He's a great prospect, all those different things. But Wiggins is different. I'm not saying better. He's just different.
Stylistically, he's very different. He's different so to have 15 years. Yeah.
Yes. And so to have him and have a guy that is a top, I think we saw him as a top 60 prospect somewhere. Just baseball?
Somewhere right around there.
So somewhere dropped him as a top 60 prospect in all of baseball. Right. To have that is just so important. I'm getting so excited. I'm throwing pins at my mic. To have him is so important, especially given all the pitching, especially given the fact that Brandon Birdsell is injured right now. And after that, it's what the heck do the Cubs have as far as pitching goes? And we'll get into that here in a little bit. But that's why having Wiggins is very important. If you were to trade Wiggins away and now you have a Brandon Birdsell injury, who's the Cubs' top pitching prospect? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that either.
And so that's why I'm really glad now. I was glad then. I'm glad now that they still have him on board. Jefferson Rojas, I just think that like that's a guy a little bit lower than all these Moises Ballesteros and Owen Casey's and James Triantos. He's a step below, literally in Knoxville in AA compared to AAA, but he's just a little bit further out than some of these guys. And so like to have him in the organization just feels super, super important. Cepeda is the other one where he kind of fits in that middle of the organization, like that right now, like 10 to 20 range. And we've just traded so many guys in that 10 to 20 range over the past few years that having that guy that can go from the 10 to 20 range to this time next year as a top 5 to 8 prospect in the Cubs organization is just super, super important. So those are my big 3 here.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I don't, I could have maybe understood almost anybody else in the system. I'm actually a little surprised like a guy like Nick Dean didn't go.
Yeah.
I think that getting to the pitching stuff, which we'll get to here in a second, there is a lack. It's why I was surprised, like a Nick Dean, Will Sanders. Honestly, a little surprised that, like Tyler Schlafer didn't go. Yeah. And he's now there's some injury risk, or Arian Hernandez or Rodriguez and stuff like that. It's a very interesting system. I could have understood a lot of those other names. And I guess where I'm fascinated to see this winter is if Jackson Wiggins finishes the year very healthy, looking solid, if they then move him and sell high. I'll be just fascinated. I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying that the Cubs are doing this. I think that whether they keep or trade him may be extremely telling on how they feel about him. Jackson Wiggins.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it's going to go.
I'll throw one last name into the mix here that besides Wiggins, Rojas, and Cepeda, if I'm going to pick a fourth guy that I'm kind of glad that they didn't move on from, it's probably Arian Rodriguez, because I'm going to look at a list that's 20 names deep in terms of pitchers. He is the one guy, as far as the pitchers go, that I look at, I'm like, what do we have here? And because you look at Nick Dean or Grant Kipp or even Will Sanders or Connor Nolan, any of these guys, and you're kind of like, I generally know what I'm getting with these dudes for the most part. I don't know how good of major league players they're going to be, but I know what they're about. Arian Rodriguez, I'm just intrigued. I'm not super, super excited. I don't have him as a surefire next best pitching prospect in the Cubs organization, but I just look at him like, he's had good results. He had better stuff. Like, he's had good stuff before. Like, I'm intrigued by him. And so to trade him, it would leave a whole bunch of other pitching prospects that I'm less intrigued by and curious. I guess curious is probably the better word than intrigued. I'm less curious about those guys than I am Arian Rodriguez. So he'd be my number 4 guy here, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get into the pitching here in just a second. So maybe I'll hold this next comment, but I would agree with you. I think that there's certainly from some system aspects to it that makes Arian particularly a guy that I'm very glad they didn't trade.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go into this last segment here, talking about the state of the system. So when I first kind of brought this up to you, as this is something I wanted to chat about today, it's because so much has changed in the organization over the last year and a half to 2 years. And so I'm looking at right now, I have 2 pieces of paper pulled up, and I'm looking at my top arms and top bats in the system. I've kind of separated these out. Let's actually talk about the bats first, because I think that it's more straightforward. That conversation is probably more straightforward. I'm looking at what the top bats in the system looked like preseason 2024. So before last season, what did the prospect list look like then versus what does my personal prospect ranking look like now as far as the top bats in the system? And so from last year to this year, of my top 20 prospects in the Cubs organization, 9 bats have either graduated from prospect status or been traded away. Those guys are Pete Crow Armstrong, who I had as the number 1 bat in the system, obviously, Matt Shaw, Alexander Canario, Zaire Hope, Matt Mervis, Luis Vasquez, Christian Franklin, Josh Rivera, and Brennan Davis. And so to move on from 9 dudes, to have 9 guys no longer in your rankings, of the top 20 bats in the system is a pretty crazy change. And spoiler alert, there's 9 arms that have also moved on from preseason 2024 to now. And so that's just a lot of talent up and down the organization, right? That I mentioned PCA and Matt Shaw. Those are like the tip top type prospects that we had in the organization preseason 24. And then you have some deeper cuts. And at the time, Brendan Davis was a pretty deep cuts. Josh Rivera obviously was not super successful with the Cubs, but he was included as a part of that package for Nate Pearson. And then you have that middle of the pack mix, right? Where the Alexander Canarios and Matt Mervises obviously did not show success with the Cubs. Ended up we're both traded away for, I think, both for cash. Well, I guess one for Vidal Brujan, one for cash. And then you got Zaire Hope, who was also traded away, and he was that middle of the pack guy that ultimately shot way up rankings. And so that's I don't know, man. I'll kick it to you. That's a lot of turnover over the course of a year and a half.
It's a lot of turnover, but it's funny because if we zoom out and say we don't follow the Cubs system all the time, and you just like plant that list in front and somebody else and said, hey, what do you think about this list and like how successful this ultimately ended up turning out? I think if you could take any passion or bias out of it, you would look at it and say, that's a stunning success.
Yeah.
Right. Like PCA by himself makes the list completely good. Matt Shaw, what he's showing is potentially an all-star third baseman at the major league level. Zaire Hope forcing his way up there. But also, even if we were just to talk about the specific return for Zaire Hope, well, Michael Busch is doing awesome. So I think those 3 people, and obviously Brennan, who we both love, a lot of people love him, and are really hoping that regardless of where he ends up, he's in the Yankees system now, that he has a successful season and really capitalizes. But if we zoom out, I would say that the aggregate amount of value out of that of success was startling, like amazingly successful. It is crazy how much turnover that is. Even if we just talk about on a consistent basis of like who we're checking in every day to watch.
Yes.
Those guys aren't in there, and many of them were like must watch, like staples every single day.
And what it does is it puts a lot of pressure on guys to come up and take those spots in a top 20 bats ranking, right? Like there's 9 spots that need to be taken. And so obviously there's a whole lot more names that I have in my personal top 20 bats in the Cubs organization right now that weren't there a year ago. But when I'm looking at the names that are currently there, I only have 2 that really stand out as since preseason 2024 taking a huge and massive step up in as far as the way I view them as prospects. One is Johnny Long, who is obviously now I have him as the 5th best bat in the Cubs organization. Preseason 24, I had Johnny Long as the 28th best bat in the Cubs organization. Yeah, I went that deep. That's something the nerd in me did. So he bumps up a huge amount. And then actually the other guy that I have here is Cristian Hernandez, because if you remember, that was coming off a really, really rough time for Cristian in his first go round in Myrtle Beach. I had preseason 2024 it was a stupid decision of me, but I had him way down at the 20th ranked prospect in the 20th best bat in the Cubs organization. So I had him way down. Now I have him around the 6 mark. And so those 2 guys have taken huge steps up. But besides those 2 dudes, there's not a whole lot of guys that I view as being way better than they were a year and a half ago. And that's unfortunate, I guess.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I think we need to put into context too, that in the span from the time frame that you described to the time frame now, we actually also saw the brief rise of Cam Smith.
Yes.
Right. Like that like happened in the middle of this
short window that we're talking
time frame. And so in many ways we had like another amazing bat performance that isn't included here.
That's true. That's a good point.
I would say that you're kind of maybe chiding yourself a little bit on Cristian Hernandez and being low on him. I think that was still totally appropriate. I mean, from a purely a batted ball perspective and like how he was looking at the plate, like this isn't a guy that just was struggling to hit in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
But everything looked good. He was doing the right things. It looked like a mess.
It looked bad. Yeah.
it looked like a mess. And so, now he put in the credit, the Cubs hitting infrastructure put in the credit. I think he's totally changed where we should view him. But it made sense. I think that Johnny Long is a huge key to this organization. I feel strong enough that I can say the teams were asking about Johnny Long, even in some bigger deals. And not saying the Cubs won't give up Johnny Long just because they didn't agree to any deal on there, but they value him like a lot.
Yeah.
Without throwing specific numbers out, and I don't want to assume what those numbers are, they clearly valued him very well and at the same level as some pretty good major league players. So I think that what he has done, 9th round pick, really in a fantastic draft, 9th round pick, what he's showing you now, I mean, that is a huge, the Cubs organization needed that, I guess is pretty much what I'm dancing around and saying, which is the whole point of this conversation of like, they needed some development wins, and Johnny Long is definitely one of them.
And I think the whole reason why I wanted to bring up this topic is to kind of highlight. There's a lot of conversations going on about like why like the Cubs system is not what it once was, and like the whole point of this segment is to answer the question like why is that, like why is it not as strong as it once was? And I guess the point with both of these that we're getting ready to get in the arms is that like we've just turned over a ton of dudes. We've graduated a ton of dudes. We've graduated the tippy top guys. We've traded away the middle tier guys, and like here's the result. And so like we're still waiting on some of these dudes to catch up and really break out in big ways. I think like the best way I can highlight the bats and the current status of the Cubs system now compared to a year and a half ago is I'm looking at my 8th and 9th ranked hitters that time last year and this year. Last time in preseason 2024, my 8th ranked hitter was Alexander Canario and my 9th ranked hitter was Zaire Hope. Today, as we sit here right now, my 8th ranked hitter is Pedro Ramirez and my 9th ranked hitter is Eli Lovich. And to me, like that describes everything, right? Like Alexander Canario had crushed the ball in the minor leagues. Obviously, he was coming off the injury. We're kind of questioning like what he would be ultimately after that. Zaire Hope was a guy that I was just insanely high on at that time. That was when I was the high man on Zaire Hope by a long shot. Little did I know he was going to turn into this. I did not expect this, but just looking at Canario and Hope is a big difference from what we have in Pedro Ramirez and Eli Lovich, with all due respect to those two players, obviously. And so that kind of describes the state of the bats in the system in my eyes.
All right. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about two guys that were, when we talk about Canario, I mean, yes, there was the injury, but that dude was ready for the major leagues.
Yeah.
And with Zaire is a guy that I don't really care where he was ranked. Mm-hmm. What he showed immediately in pro ball is, like just throw that ranking away.
Yeah.
You had two organizations that were after him, at least in the Cubs and the Dodgers, who at the time of the draft, like they loved him. And if they were picking in front of the Cubs, I think Zaire Hope would have gone there. So, there's that aspect of it where you get like somebody who's ready to contribute to the majors or somebody who is just like immediately proved that they were ready for professional ball. And now it's kind of like a little microcosm here. But it was Lovich and Pedro Ramirez, right?
Yep.
Ramirez has been this like hitterish tendency guy, a little bit above average at the different levels, pretty solid for his age. I'm probably a second baseman. He's kind of interesting. Had he gotten traded this summer, I don't think anybody would have been really surprised.
Yeah.
Eli Lovich is a guy where, yes, he could be like a Zaire Hope, but he hasn't proved it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is interesting to compare those two categories there because the talent level, again, no disrespect to either of them. We like both of those guys, but it is pretty significant.
And if we can follow the same script here for the arms, the pitchers in my top 20 preseason 24, and now, like I said, 9 guys have either graduated or are no longer in the system. That's Cade Horton, Jordan Wicks, Jackson Ferris, Ben Brown, and Luke Little, who I had those guys ranked 1 through 5. Those are our top 5 arms a year and a half ago. Add in Michael Arias, Porter Hodge, Caleb Killian, and Bailey Horn. And there you've got 9 guys in the top 20 arms of the system that are no longer considered prospects that the Cubs have. And so, again, following that same script, there's 2 guys that I have as significantly improved their stock, I guess is the best way to describe it, from then to now. One is Jackson Wiggins. Obviously, I had Jackson Wiggins ranked down. Oh, man, where did I have Jackson Wiggins? I had Jackson Wiggins down number 6. So obviously behind that big grouping, but that isn't like Jackson Wiggins now is not even remotely what Jackson Wiggins was a year and a half ago. And actually the other name I have highlighted here that's taken a big step up is actually Brandon Birdsell, who before 2024, remember this was before his minor league pitcher of the year award. I had Brandon Birdsell ranked as the 13th best arm in the Cubs organization. Now I have him as the second ranked, but obviously now the injuries thrown into the mix. And so that's a lot of high end talent to replace as far as their arms go. And then you're trading away guys like Ryan Gallagher, and you're trading away guys like Ty Johnson, who I had as a breakout guy. He was not in my top 20 preseason 2024, but had worked his way up to the top 10-ish in the arms in the Cubs system by the time the trade deadline rolled around, and they traded away him. So that's a lot of talent to replace, especially on this arm side of the thing.
I think it's the biggest area for the Cubs that they need to address. And, you know, without speaking out of turn, I think that people understand it within the organization. There's some optimism on some of the guys they brought in. You know, Dominic Reed, Caleb Wing, you know, Eli Dzerbek, you know, was a guy that outside of the Cubs organization, people are like, oh, man, that's a really nice, you know, 11th round pick. But they got to get pretty lucky on some of these development wins. Like they just do. They have to. And they have to have Dominic Reed take to pro ball like Ryan Gallagher did. And then hopefully even can do better with a breaking ball.
Yeah.
They did lose a lot of talent in the last couple of years. And Horton and Ferris are probably the biggest ones to me, just in the sense of, you know, that was effectively their draft in 2022. And now we're talking about lost value from a prospect system perspective. The Cubs haven't lost value with Cade Horton, right? Like he's doing it in Dan Kantrovitz's wildest dreams. Like Cade Horton is maybe doing what he's doing right now at the major league level. So stunning success there. Jackson Ferris, you know, Michael Busch, like we were talking about with Zyger Hope. But at the end of the day, like if you're talking about pitching strength within the organization, it has gone from, hey, this is really good or pretty solid. And we've got a headliner. We've got a couple other guys that are really interesting. We've got Jackson Ferris, who could be that headliner. And you had kind of some depth there. And now we had the conversation of after Jackson Ferris, who is with Brandon Birdsell's injury, who is the second best pitching prospect. Yeah. And I have a couple names that I thought, but like, it's different and it's not.
So to go down each side, right? Number 1 then was Cade Horton. Number 1 now Jackson Wiggins. 2 top 100 prospects, makes sense. The second guy then was Jordan Wicks. Now is Brandon Birdsell. Not too far. I mean, Jordan Wicks was getting some like sneaking into like the top 150 prospects in all of baseball. Brandon Birdsell wasn't really getting that, but like those are pretty comparable, right?
Yeah, those are pretty
that. Yeah. Okay, then was Jackson Ferris, number 3. Now is Will Sanders. Kind of compare and contrast those two guys. It was Ben Brown at number 4. Now it's Nick Dean is who I have as the fourth best arm, right? Yeah. Like that's a big difference there between those two guys. You go down a little bit further, then you got Jackson Wiggins at 6, and then Grant Kipp is who I have there now. It's those are kind of comparing then versus now. It just gets really interesting. And part of that is like I mentioned before, we need to have guys like Arian Rodriguez really take that curiosity and like run with what he could potentially be. And we need to see that breakout. The pitching prospects that were drafted in this year's class need to really take off in ways that we could only kind of dream about. And so those are going to be huge moving on. Another kind of litmus test that I like to do when I go back and look at my past prospect rankings are to see where I rank my first and second, but like first reliever in the system, as far as compared to other arms. Because like relievers, as good as relievers can be, you can have the best reliever ever, but you're not going to rank them as a top 10 pitching prospect in the Cubs organization, because like they can only bring so much value in terms of WAR at the major league level. And so like I like to look at where my top ranked reliever looks like year over year. This year I have Riley Martin right now ranked as like the 12th best arm in the Cubs organization. And I think Riley Martin is very, very good, but he's a reliever, right? He's 12th best arm. Preseason 2024, I had Bailey Horn actually as my top ranked like true reliever. There's other guys that were kind of flirting with the idea of being a reliever. Luke Little was one of them. Michael Arias was another one of them, but they weren't established 1-inning reliever type guys, right? I had Bailey Horn ranked as the 19th best arm in the Cubs system. So to go from 19 to 12, and is Riley Martin that much better than what Bailey Horn was back in preseason 2024? I don't know. That's up for debate, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you really pushed me on like which one would I take, I actually would take Riley Martin.
I would as well. I would as well.
The like upper 80s now breaking ball is insane.
Yes.
But yeah, to your point, right? Like it's not like they have a dominating reliever that other organizations, like a Mason Miller or something like that. I know he didn't come up that way, but you look at him and you're like, well, yeah, he's awesome. Like, of course he's better.
Yep.
And they don't have that. They just have like Riley is very good and he has taken step forwards, but it's not like he's going to end up on the top 100 list.
Yes.
Hopefully in the majors here very soon though.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. In the system just is rough. I have to really think about who I would even have as the second best pitching prospect. And it probably goes to like the proximity versus ceiling discussion.
Yeah.
Which those don't have to be mutually exclusive, but if you've got somebody with both, like Jackson Wiggins, then that's why they're a top 60, top 75 prospect. It's a really challenging thing because I mean, I like Will Sanders, but I don't know that he offers too much, right? Like that's not a critique on your list.
No,
I don't think you're off, but
I think what like my I guess I'll you to end this, but like my final thought on this, because you brought this up, is that Will Sanders, Nick Dean, Arian Rodriguez, Grant Kipp, those four guys, I love those four guys if they are like the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th best pitching prospects in the Cubs organization.
Yeah.
Love them. I like them. I like them anyways, obviously. But I love those dudes if they're ranked 7 through 10. Them ranked 2 through 5 is like I don't know that I love them ranked 2 through 5. You know, I think they can all be major league players, but I think they can be major league players ranked as the 7th best pitching prospect in the organization, not as the 2nd best pitching prospect in the organization. So that's what I come down to ultimately.
Yep. I think that's totally fair.
All right, man. Anything else you want to hit on with these lists or anything else?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we're coming up on an interesting time with the baseball season where, I mean, really the focus is going to primarily be about the Cubs playoff push. Yeah. And for many fans it is, but if you're tuning into this, chances are you also really pay attention to the prospects in the draft. At least one of those. And so, but with the season coming to a conclusion here very soon with the minor league side, it really is going to turn all into the major league team. Mm-hmm. But the Cubs front office stuff, it really wouldn't surprise me to see a lot of discussions on, okay, where are we going? And like, how do we want to get there? There have been some development wins. There have been some really good draft picks. There have been some good steps along the way. But sometimes it's felt like maybe some of those have happened like independently, which you still need. It's good, but you kind of are hoping everything is super seamless. And I would be just very interested to see if now that there's some new names in the organization and now that people have kind of settled in and where everything goes, if we see some like, okay, hey, now that we've evaluated things, here's a direction that I think we should go. It'll just be very interesting to see how they tackle. We are no longer in a building phase. We are in the win phase. Yeah. And so how do you still acquire talent when you are in a situation in which you have to give up some of that minor league talent? The Dodgers have done an amazing job of this. I mean, people joke about the Dodgers and they don't like him. That's fine. It's all understandable. But they have found a way to insert themselves into these silly little deals.
Yeah.
And come away with comp picks or whatever, trading away very little talent in players. And all of a sudden they're a third team and they're the ones bringing in like the best players in the deal.
They're still one of the World Series favorites, and they just brought in James Tibbs, who was a first-round draft pick last year.
Yeah, it just mind-numbingly frustrating. And yes, like money solves a lot of that, but it's still how they just the creativity and inserting themselves into these deals is astounding. And I'm kind of hoping that like maybe not that specific, but that type of creativity or that level of creativity is what we see the Cubs organization doing. They were able to bring in a Kyle Tucker. Obviously, you want to bring him in, keep him long-term, but they were able to do that. That's a very straightforward baseball deal. Yeah, maybe you could argue some creativity, but not really. Like it was just a straightforward baseball deal. I am hoping that there's the opportunity now on either side of it. Perhaps it is trading some of these players that at the AAA, but they probably should be in the majors, but they're kind of blocked, but not truly blocked. They still have value. Maybe there's I'm going to make this joke, but like a Michael Busch light type of a deal would be very interesting. So that's all I want to say is that I think we're at a really interesting time where it'll be fascinating to see what the organization does. And obviously, hopefully you're doing it from the standpoint of a very long playoff run.
I'll say I feel better. I feel good. I know that we are typically only optimism on this show, and so to end the show with a little bit of negativity, obviously, like framing the system is factual, but also a little bit of negativity towards it all because it's frustrating, right? We've been I think what's especially frustrating from my perspective is that when I started this podcast back however many years ago, it was it's a good farm system because we're starting to rebuild, right? It was back in like 2020-ish, 2019, 2020, when the farm system was at its low point and continuing to get better and better and better. And so now we're sitting here and the system isn't nearly as good as it once was. And so I don't like to be negative, too negative on this show, especially because the whole idea of prospects is there's a prospect of them being good, and you get to be optimistic. And that's why I follow prospect. That's why I follow the minor league system and follow prospects, is because I like to be optimistic about all this stuff. So to get a little bit of negativity off my chest on the podcast for one time over the course of 116 episodes or whatever number this is, it felt a little bit good. I'll take it. So in the meantime, thank you guys so much for listening. This ended up being a jam-packed episode, which I did not expect it to be. Thank you for listening. You can find him over on social media on Twitter at Ivy Futures, right? And then over on the 1060 West Discord channel, which the Cubs prospect channel is super, super fun. They can reach out to you, right, Zumach, if they want an invite?
Yeah. Reach out to Brian Smith or myself. You could reach out to Greg Huss too, and he'll get us connected. But sure. we'll if you want an invite to that, shoot us a message. We're always happy to help out.
You can find the show anywhere where you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all that good stuff. You can check us out on our YouTube channel if you're so inclined. Leave us a like if you could. We'd really, really appreciate a like and a comment down below. Let us know get your frustrations out in the comments if you want. I see them every week anyway, so I'd love to see more of them. But give us a comment, give us a like. We really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much, and we'll be back in your ears in one short week.